What's going on? We are the two biggest losers in Jacksonville. The two biggest losers in Jacksonville. About to talk about our current top 10 prospects in the 2026 class. Um, Pretty much going to talk about our criteria, like why we grade these players higher than normal. I guess some of our honorable mentions, and I guess a few concerns of particular guys that may be in your top 10 or the consensus top 10, but not in ours. So, Elijah, how you doing?
Good man. I'm straight. I'm currently watching Darius Acuff sell, and I'm really gonna bring down my arguments, but it's okay. He's gonna get it back.
Yeah, that's okay. Florida's obviously very good. He's being chinyalued right now. So, um, as you can see, hopefully, as long as the screen share is working, our top 10 are like fairly similar for the most part, like top four or five or six, seven. But
Oh my.
no, the top six is like essentially the same. Obviously, we have a difference at the top that we'll discuss and yell at. But
DP
of
is cool.
course, Mara and Ngongba both rounded out 8 and 9. But starting with like your honorable mentions, I know we previously were before we started
Get
recording.
criteria, dog. What are you doing?
Oh yeah, yeah. The criteria. So at least me personally, we were just previously talking about it. Like a lot of it goes back to long-term impact. And when I first started like legitimately caring about scouting and doing some of these crappy videos, if you've seen my old channel, and it was terrible. Like I literally had a EJ Liddell video scouting, and it was the next Grant Williams, and it was horrible. And now he's out of the league.
Next Grant
Like he's out of the league now. And another guy that like I was completely high on was Jabari Smith Jr. because I thought he was just Jason Tatum for some reason. I don't know what I was thinking. Obviously, that didn't go too well. But as I've started to like watch more, read into a lot more stuff, like using the site that we've kind of been
abusing.
using, yeah, abusing a little bit too much. Freaking Bart online is obviously free. Like looking into the historical data and the analytics of it, and going back and seeing the history of particular archetypes and typical like statistical profiles that end up sustaining long careers. Like that's pretty much what goes into it now. And a lot of the Twitter draft guys are they get some backlash for only watching the spreadsheets. But if you have a good marriage between watching tape and obviously looking at a bunch of the metrics, I think that's a pretty fair assessment.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny. We were talking about the other day with Taylor Wyman. He responded to somebody being
Oh
like,
yeah.
"I don't watch the game. I just want to look at spreadsheets." Obviously, being sarcastic, but I mean, it was just as simple as you're looking at the numbers, you're looking at the history, and it's just to back up what you're seeing on tape or what you believe you're seeing, right? We don't want to go off the eye test because if I go off the eye test, Ace Bailey would have gone number one last year. But But no, with mine, I definitely would say I'm not. I don't know if I'm there yet, the same way you are with like career trajectory and like the archetypes. And prime example, of course, is like the A cuffs and stuff like that. But I will say with mine, it was definitely a bit more of I am taxing a little bit for them being a little bit older. I think we've seen in recent years. Obviously, the guy I go to as a Lakers fan is Dalton Connect, right? He's been pretty solid. He was amazing. I loved watching him in college. And in the league, you would think his archetype would transfer as a 3 and D guy. Obviously, didn't have the great numbers on the defensive end and stuff like that, but still should be able to find a role and started off high and then fizzles out, right?
Yeah.
So a little bit of a tax there, but obviously, with a guy like Derek White, it's very possible for guys to come in the league and be like that. But overall, the really main thing with me was just essentially really valuing kind of where I think the floor is going to be at with you, right? Like coming into the league, I'm imagining what like the least amount I'm going to get out of you is going to be, and also just do I think you're going to impact winning early on, um, and also just again like the archetype thing. Not not so much about the history and what the translation is going to be, just more of what do I think guys are going to be valuing in the league. Prime example when we get into it is Quaintance, right? Not that great offensively or nothing like that. Really reminds me. I was saying we talked about the other day. At his peak, could be like a Jonathan Isaac, but he kind of reminds me of what like Carter Bryant is this year, getting taken mostly because of what we see with him defensively, while he's god awful offensively,
Yeah.
right? But there's just so much value nowadays in a guy who can be that good defensively, right? The two most valuable things are rim protection nowadays, like elite being an elite defender, and the ability to shoot the ball, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I was thinking about it. But that said, you want to start off with your honorable mentions? I have a good couple, some that's on your list. So
Yeah, and I'll go right back to Quaintance because I mean, I've been pretty bullish on him for a while. Like he was, I almost had him at 3 at one point, like earlier in the process. Just like I don't think a lot of people realize like what he was doing at Arizona State and kind of like the pedigree that he has kind of built surrounding his defensive presence. Like I don't know what the like actual confirmed wingspan was. I remember when I wrote a report on him for Draft Stack, and it was reported to be 7'5". There was another one that said 7'3". Like, and he's probably going to measure in at 6'10", and he's 250 plus. Like he's got the tools to be a game wrecker on that end. Like you could probably deploy him out in a multitude of different lineups, like alongside a shooting big or just a guy with a lot more size and someone that maybe a little bit slower, like a Zubats or someone within that realm. But like he's like special on that end. Like it was a good article about it, and like he's the level of defensive prospect that he is. It's like up there with like how good of a prospect overall Cooper Flagg was like last year. Like he's pretty special on that end. I don't remember like the exact number, but I do think it was like I know we talked about it the other day, like a 9.7 or 6 block percentage at 17 years old for Arizona State, and that's through 24 games, so that's a pretty good sample size as well. But obviously the ACL is a question mark there. But I thought he looked fine. Like his first game back against St. John's, he looked maybe not the same athlete, but like he looked fine. Like, and he had a couple good drive. Like he had one really good drive that was really impressive against their big. I don't want to mess up his last name. Zubia Hiafor or something like that, who's actually a really good player and strong, and he gave him the work a few times. Like he was bodying him. So I mean, Quaintance is obviously one like I could definitely see sneaking back into my 10, and it'd be for good reason. Like I would not be mad if anybody had him like top 6. But obviously I'll talk about Wagler more or like later on with like because I know we have some questions surrounding like his creation and all that, but obviously he's got really good he's got deep range, and he's at 6'6", kind of a lighter frame, but I mean he's a really good shot maker. He's been really impactful like outside of shooting. Like he's just been solid. Like the numbers back it up, and I think the tape to an extent also backs it up. But another one was Steinbach. I could go on for probably 20 minutes with Hans. Like he's like the most obvious 10+ year career player. He's just really soft hands, soft touch around the rim, and really good rebounder on both ends. Like he fits like he's not the same athlete as like a guy like Mo Wagner was a few years ago before he tore his ACL, unfortunately. But like within that archetype of kind of a big that's not necessarily known for his defensive presence, but like he can switch out and kind of flip his hips and kind of funnel guys towards another rim protector, and just at least make an impact on that end. But offensively, like I wrote a report for him, and he can push it off his own rebound. Like he's got good touch, and he's able to push it out in front, kick it out in front. Like he's got good post footwork and on the interior. I don't know the exact numbers for his rim finishing, but I know it was really impressive early on through like the first 12 games. But he's coming off like a really big game. He had like 24 and 15 and like 4 blocks. So like he's been really productive for a pretty bad Washington team, even though it's a tough conference. But I mean, he's another one that I could easily see going top 10, at least returning like lottery value at the very least.
oh, wow.
Yeah,
That was the guy for me who was like my toughest cut, and it's for the same reasons you just said. Like, We'll talk about it with like Cam later, but just he is just so obviously going to be good in the league. Like, and again, goes back to the kind of archetype thing where is going to fit in. Obviously, the three point isn't like amazing, but the fact that he's willing to take some and has been decent percentages, like you said, the ability to push it off his own rebound, rebounding well, like he just has all the things that at for his archetype is just going to fit well in the league, right? And he's just been solid overall. The other one being, you keep saying it the other way. I'm just gonna say Wagler. Um, I actually had him in my top 10 to start, and then as I was kind of going more through it, I took him off, and there's definitely a lot to be said. So I actually still have a lot more of his numbers still because I just didn't see any point in getting rid of them, right? And I think the most glaring thing that we both talked about, first of all, is I would really like to mention the 3 point rate, right? 49.4%, almost 50% of your attempts coming from downtown. That is going to translate to the league pretty well, right?
Yep.
The thing we mentioned on the other side of that, right, is the reason that that can be so effective is that you need to combine that with the rim attempts and getting to the free throw line, right? Because that makes for the most quality shot diet. But with him, only a 30% drive rate at the rim. He has a 60% rim, 60% at the rim. Only 13 with three of them being assisted, so he is doing a lot of self creation, but he's just not getting to it that much. And still, that 60% isn't that great. And even on tape, I think you mentioned this to me before, and I definitely agree with it. He doesn't have the ability to get by guys like that, right? Like with some of these other guards we're going to mention and talk about, like they just can't get, they can break their defender down, right? And then now it's about, can I finish past the second defender, make a read on the second defender, stuff like that. With him, you just don't see that as much. And I think that really is reflected, and we talk about this with the ISO to like change in ISO and pick and rolls, right? Minus 22% when he's coming into isolation, right? So just dropping off significantly as an isolation, and obviously for most guards, that is going to be one of your main qualities, right? So definitely there's still a lot to like, and again, the 3 point rate is just something that I'm in love with. But I think the most telling thing about the drive, one dunk attempt, and he missed it. That is it, right? Like you are just not getting to the rim at a high level, right? And for his size, you would expect more. Like he is a solidly big guard, especially for his style of play and stuff like that. But I definitely could see him coming in and being one of those guys who's going to give you that type of value. But I just, especially in this class, there's just so many other guards I would rather go with. Another one of mine, just to mention it, was Ruben Chinilu. Just disgusting. We mentioned it at the beginning.
Yeah.
The versatility on defense, what he does. You mentioned it, the not having great hands, but just not really an honorable mention, but just kind of a guy to shout. The other two I had on my list is Swain and Sturts, which I know are on your list, so I'll kind of wait to get to that. Um, Especially with Sturts, the more you mentioned it, I wasn't really looking at him. My God, just disgusting. I especially with Swain too, as a scorer in isolation, one of the most ridiculous scoring profiles in isolation we've seen. So with both of them, utterly disgusting. And I will mention this now with a lot of these guys in our honorable mention and stuff like that, and going into the top 10. Like I wouldn't be against any of them really being top 10. Like especially
Yeah.
depending on who has what pick, right? Like there is a solid chance that any of these guys go into that. Again, with some of them, obviously the guys I just mentioned, they are older guys. We were talking about A Cup versus Sturts. I was asking like how much of him playing right now has just been the fact that he's been doing it for longer, right? Like there were some concerns with that and stuff, but there's definitely some production value that is just you know unquestionable to a certain point, right? Like he's just that good. That's kind of just the best way to put it. The only other one that I really had on mind, I know you had a couple more, is Phylon. We were talking
Yeah.
about scalability last year versus this year. The 3 point rate, the guy can knock it down. He can take them. Um, just in general, he's been great in transition. 1.9 points in transition, points per possession in transition. 67.8 effective field goal percentage in transition. So the ability to get out. I know, bro.
Uh, insane.
But no, he's been just great in transition. As an isolationist, 1.7 ISO points per possession. That is ridiculous. Now it's been low volume, only 3% of his total possessions being that, but that is still just utterly ridiculous. And just his role in general, like last year not being as much of a primary focus, and even this year not being ridiculously amounts on the ball compared to some of these other guards. Oh my God, I can't speak. Guards. So with him, again, one of those guys I could see definitely going up there. And again, I'm gonna keep coming back to it because I'm gonna spend a good time talking about him. But with like a guy versus against Acuff, there's probably gonna be a team, right, where a majority of teams probably are going to be looking to take a guy like Bylon versus a guy like Acuff, right? But that's really the main amount of ones that I have. I don't know. You mentioned like 10 off camera, so
Yeah.
how many more you want to dive into?
I at least want to touch on Wagler or I really don't know how to say his last name. But, I'll say Wagler for this, but like I was pulling up the numbers as you were talking. Like he's bro, like outside of like or non-rim two pointers, he's shooting 31.5% on 73 attempts, and 4.3 of them are assisted. Like like he's creating the looks,
He's
but
just
they're not good looks.
yeah.
They're not good looks. He doesn't like. I know you touched on it with like he has one dunk attempt and he missed it. I remember that one pretty vividly. Like he doesn't have the elevation or the strength to kind of deal with these longer, stronger, more athletic defenders as he's starting to get to the interior and closer to the paint. Like it's gonna be tough for him. Which I mean the NBA is always looking for guys that can like operate out of the pick and roll, which I think his numbers there are like really good. Which actually I'm not gonna pull them up now. I'll pull them up when you're talking, but um, I do remember his numbers being really good. I think maybe I don't know if it's I think he's right ahead of Sturts and Debonsa with like the points per possession within that pick and roll situation. Like he's really good coming off and looking for the deep range three, which, like you mentioned, that's what we love. Like we want to see high 3 point rate and obviously a pretty good amount of conversions on within that situation. And yeah, that's ideal. That's what you want to see. But there are legitimate concerns for the guys that have him like top four, which just seems a bit nuts considering a whole bunch of different factors. And then with Phylon, like you mentioned, the scalability. One dude compared him to Nemhard, and I think in like in a vacuum, like that's a similar type of role where he could be. Nemhard's a lot more. His frame's more filled out, and then he's obviously older, but a guy that can scale back and maybe defend at a bit of a higher level. Like last year, his steal percentage was much higher. Jeez, and this year, like he's got a much more prominent on-ball role, and he's taking more threes, converting more. He gets to the paint, he's able to draw fouls, and I think his interior passing has gotten a lot better, where he's been able to. And Alabama's kind of like they play with a lot of similar style guards with like the thinner guys that don't really like out physical you, but can beat you with craft and speed, and that's pretty much the epitome of what Phylon does. Like I think that's going to translate really well. And I did have a few other guys. I'm not going to freaking talk about them for ages because I'm going to lose my breath. But Flory Badunga from Kansas, he had a rough game today. But like when you look at a team like Charlotte and what Musa Diabate is doing, like as a high energy guy on both sides that can pass it, rebound, and just run the floor, like that's essentially what Badunga. Oh my gosh, what Badunga what Badunga does, but like at a higher level, and probably a guy that's going to end up being drafted. I don't even think Diabate got drafted in his year, and now he's definitely earning a second contract with a team that really uses him well and is really effective when he's out there. And I think Badunga could really kind of give you that similar type of impact on both ends, rebounding, and really as a passer, he's gotten way better this year compared to his freshman year. Another one was Morez Johnson from Michigan, obviously the more mature of the two in that front court with the actual Lindenborg. But obviously, Morez is like if his statistical profile matches up pretty similarly with Isaiah Stewart in terms of the impact. Oh my gosh, in terms of the impact, kind of like a bruiser that can rebound on both ends and just he plays with toughness and finishes at the rim really well at a high rate. I don't know the exact numbers with him, but Like he's one of the more obvious, like maybe not playoff starters, but playoff rotation pieces that's going to come in and give you 100% every single time. Cam Carr from Baylor, who's playing right now, he's having a good game. He's pretty much the like what you want to see in a modern day wing, long wingspan, 6'6", can shoot from deep range, and is really athletic and gets up for a lot of blocks. I don't know. I don't think he has a high steal rate, but like his block percentage has been really good. Like he recovers really well with his long arms and does an excellent job of just kind of making impact on that end. At least making like splash plays. Obviously, you want to see a little bit more consistency, but as long as he's doing that, there's flashes. Then Braden Burries, who really balled out today for Arizona, he's kind of just a smooth scorer who can do it at all three levels. But I think defensively, he's been taking a step, especially playing for Arizona and like playing within a system like that. That always helps. But he's definitely another guy that could probably shoot into the top 20, at least in the later part of the first round. But he's been really solid over the past 2 months in conference play.
Oh, all right then. Well, you want to just get right into the top 10? I guess I'll start with mine since you I already mentioned the guy. Um,
Oh yeah,
I will quickly say, sorry, I have a lot of the numbers in front of me. Um, for my entire like top 10 list, I did the per 40 for the basic stats. And then obviously the other website we are using, I have for all the other efficiency metrics and like against the top 50 teams. So that's just kind of why to really quickly establish, I just wanted to do it that way because like a prime example is a guy like DP, right? Not playing that much, isn't getting a ton of possessions, so I want to increase that. The other number I could have used was the per 100, but you have guys who like a Cam Boozer would been averaging like 40 and 15 if I do that. So it's just like there's no reason, and I unfortunately could not find the per 75. So
yeah.
this was a good middle ground for me. Um, but just to start, yeah, I will be using both years, and then of course I just want to start off by mentioning the ACL. Uh, it is definitely a concern. Like it is a major thing for him, especially for a guy who's going to be relying on his athleticism as a major part of his game. But with all that said, even on his per 40, 12 points a game, 52% from the field. The biggest thing, obviously, on offense is the 3-point percentage. He has not shot even one this year. Obviously, hasn't played too much. But even last year was barely taking them and just did not hit them.
Yeah.
Um, I think the numbers, even as I'm saying them, right, like 45% from the free throw line, 30% from the free throw line this year. Um, like those numbers still don't even tell the full story of how raw he is offensively. Like really and truly, if you watch him play on tape, you can tell that he is just not fully comfortable there yet, right? Like the shot mechanics look a little funky when he's driving down a hill. Like he doesn't have too much craft, right? Even the like kind of shot selections are kind of seem like he's just kind of throwing something up sometimes, right? So the thing with him is obviously there is no case for him to be in the top 10 based off of offense. Like that is just not the case at all. Um, I will mention though at least that against top 50 quality teams, this is only his ASU year, just because they don't have the numbers for this year. It was the numbers they had for this year was only a 2 game sample size, so I really didn't even want to bother using that. But I will say, against those top 50 quality teams at ASU, um, still was 58% on twos, 54% true shooting. So the drop off wasn't really too much, and that was 18 attempts. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. He had 18 attempts from three and was 22% on those. So maybe a slight buff, but like such low volume that it's not going to make too much of a big difference. But obviously, the main thing with him is the defense, right? So across these 2 years, 3.4 blocks per 40. Absurd. 9.4 block percentage. Like,
Hmm.
I don't think people realize when we'll talk about like some of the centers and stuff like that, right? Like I think I have Mar and him above and Gongba right before him, right? So with them, Gongba has a 6.6 block percentage. With Mara, let me see what it was, 11.6. This guy is a power forward who moves around and like is guarding wings with similar and better block percentages than the other centers we're talking about, who are still elite rim protectors. Like
Yeah.
that is just so abnormal. Like I don't think people truly understand how ridiculous that is. Along with that, also, 4.1 offensive rebounds per 40. genuinely I think people like what prime example was the Houston Rockets, right? The ability to just generate extra possessions is always going to be one of the biggest things. Like the Celtics this year, them being so good on the margins, right? Obviously the turnovers, but a big thing they do is getting on the glass, getting offensive rebounds and rebounding the ball, right? The ability to close possessions and generate more possessions for yourself will always be one of the most valuable traits in basketball, and that is something he can do for you, right? He can turn people over, he can create blocks, he can get people away from the rim, and if they get to the rim, he's going to turn them out and give them an empty possession, and then he can get you extra possessions on the offensive end. That will always be valuable as a player. Like one other thing I want to mention about him, right? We talked about you mentioned it earlier was kind of those guys that come in and just be like a wrecking ball, right? A prime example, obviously, is not like this, but like a Mitchell Robinson.
Yeah.
Obviously, you play him too much, but if you want to just deploy him for a little bit to just come in and muck up the game, he can do that 1000%, right? So that's really the main thing where it is with him, as well as against the top 50 quality teams. Still a 7.1 block percentage and a 1.9 steal percentage. So the guy is against better teams. Your numbers are always going to usually get worse, right? But they're not dropping by too much, and I'm not really too worried about that with him. The guy just in general, um, he's been solid. He's just continued to do the things that you want to see from a guy, right, who's going to be a defensive prospect. And the main thing for me is just when you get if he's coming to the league and guys are willing to take a chance on him, it is going to be because of those tools. It's going to be because, like you mentioned, 6'10", 255s, possible 7'5" wingspan, and he can just move around like a freak, right?
Yeah.
So that's the main selling point with him. 100%, I can understand people being like, hey, the offense is just so like decrepit that is it really worth being on this guy? Um, and that's fair. I mean, in today's game, you can be played off of the floor if you are just that bad, right? But again, like I mentioned with like a Mitchell Robinson and stuff like that, that the ability to just come in and muck up the game, and of course doing the things on the margins that he can do, and just be an absolute freak on defense, is something that I think teams are going to be willing to take a chance on. And as well, that just simply, how do I put this? I guess I should just leave it at that. Like teams are going to be willing to take a chance on him and see what they can get out of it. Even if at the end of the day he doesn't really develop the offense, the ability to just kind of deploy him on defense is always going to be there.
Yeah. Well, definitely one more thing with Quaintance that I wanted to mention. I remember writing about it. Like like obviously he has the weight for it. Like he's already 255, and like at least around that, and he's just turned 18. I want to say probably at the end of last year, and like he the first game he played against Ejiofor this year for St. John's, like that dude, he's freaking strong, and he was completely walling him off, and essentially he had no room to he did his work like extremely early when the big on St. John's was trying to steal him, and he would push him out, not like obviously foul, but like he would push him out away from the basket, and it would just make it a whole lot tougher for him to even get a good shot up, or at least even try and create. So obviously he's pretty special on that end. Obviously at my 10, we didn't really talk about him a lot, but or you mentioned like his isolation scoring. Daylon Swain is um, he's pretty much a Twitter darling for a lot of these guys on in the draft space, and I guess I've fallen victim to it. He's got a pretty special profile for a wing who's, I want to say, 21 on draft night, which is still, he's got time. So, um, but he's one that like he rebounds, he passes. I got the numbers on me right now, but like he has a 21.1% defensive rebound rate. Like that's for a wing, that's pretty special. I don't remember the exact like where Texas's offense like ranks specifically, but they play at like a slower pace, and they don't take a bunch of threes. But the fact that Swain's able to like engineer I don't know if it's still top 10, but like a top 15 offense, while where he has the burden of creating a bunch of stuff in the half court and getting downhill, especially playing with like not bad spacing, but like weirdly structured spacing. Like he's he's dealing with like a pretty interesting situation, and the fact that he's still able to, like, what the heck was that? That was so loud.
For
And,
my text message, my phone.
but but the fact that he's still able to like produce at such a high level and score the ball efficiently at essentially all three levels. Like he's not a three level scorer because he doesn't like he's starting to take more threes, and I can appreciate like the willingness to take it. And he's honestly, I think he's been, at least after today, I think he went like 1 for 4. But outside of that, he's been like above 36% from three on I don't remember the exact number, but he's taken 5.1 like per 100. So like that's middle ground, like slightly below average, but obviously you want to see him kind of up that. But one guy who I got some respect for, I can't remember his exact name on Twitter. Like he does a bunch of good work, but like his profile is like similar to a guy like Tatum and a guy like Wagner, and so like specifically these guys, like they're able to scale up their play, and obviously Tatum's a freaking superstar. Like he's the standard for this type of profile of a wing that can dribble, pass, and shoot, but also defend and make an impact on the other end without like dropping their efficiency offensively, especially like that's the stuff you want to see. Like that's almost like star creator type of impact. Like I don't know if Swain will ever get up to that because I don't know if he'll ever like be that type of shooter, and it's not like Wagner is either. But um, like I want to say, yeah, I got the numbers right now. Like Swain is on like far 2 pointers, he's shooting 50% and he's taking 63 of them. Like he's 32 for 63. Like that's honestly really solid numbers. But he's just like a really unique type of wing that can do it all, but also like engineer and be and have an offense kind of like built around him. Like if he gets some shooters around him in the league, like there's a chance that he could definitely take another step and return like top 7, top 8 value. But yeah, he's legit.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think one of the main things with the like the 3 point shot, right? When I'm looking at him on tape, the main concern I really had with that is simply kind of just not really his mechanics, but it looks like
Slow.
it will struggle to get sped up, right?
Yeah.
Like he shoots a little bit slower, and it's just kind of funky there. So come league, if the game's faster, you are willing to take those shots, obviously, and you're adding it more into your shot diet, which obviously we're gonna love that, right? But
Yeah.
at a higher paced league, is that going to be a struggle for you to now actually get them off? Um, but I do have the other like ISO numbers and the pick and roll numbers, right? 0.9 points per possession in the pick and roll, and then isolation 1.6, right? So even without the three ball, they're
Yeah.
utterly disgusting. And just in general, man, I think what really shocked me was his size. 6'8", 220, I believe.
Yeah.
It's utterly ridiculous, right? Obviously, again, like I mentioned earlier, a little bit of tax because of the age. So, what is the learning curve going to be like there once you get to the league? But at the same time, right? We come back to the kind of the archetype thing. You mentioned it with like the Jason Tatum and those types of profiles. He just fits that mold, and there's just a good chance he's going to be that good, right? And I'm not really knocking anything for him. Like he has just been good and elite. It's just simply I was valuing the more. I was valuing the defense and the like possible high of what a guy like Quinn's could provide
Yeah.
later.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I definitely agree with everything you're saying there. Um, now it
These
comes.
next two, let's just chat back and forth because it's literally just the same too.
I know I was just what I
Yeah.
wanted to say is that we have the same spot. I will just I guess to start off the first thing that the reason why I have Mara above Gangba is simply just kind of the passing profile, right? I was thinking about a guy like a Derek Lively, obviously not the same type of player, right? But I was thinking back to that 2024 playoffs, right? One of the biggest strengths with D Live is his passing, right? Especially out of the short roll, and I think that is one of the most like one of the best things and most underrated things that a roller can have, right? Draymond Green made a living off of this. And on tape, just simply with Mara, there, a lot of the times he's making not only like the simple pass, but he's able to just quickly, pick it up wherever it is on the floor, take a peek, and just make the read, right?
Yeah.
Um, so that was really the biggest thing with me, is that's kind of why I had him there. He's definitely a little bit raw still. He struggles a little bit with physicality, trying to kind of bully ball through people. And it's the same thing with Gongba, right? But it's been a bit worse with Mara, I believe, and of course that's a bit more of a concern because he is older. So kind of a little bit of concern there coming to the league, but if coming to the league, you're not. That's not going to really be his job. Is I need to post up somebody and hit a fucking 65% post hook. That's not
Yeah.
gonna be there, right? But the ability to just play finish, right? Maybe play make out of the short roll. That's going to be there. I don't know as much if that's going to be there with Gongba, right? But that was the main reason. I don't
That's
know if you have some similar, different.
yeah. I'll say in Gangba, like I don't think I'm like I feel like the passing highs with Mara have been higher than Ngangba, and I think a lot. I think Ngangba is going to be deployed much more in that short role, just considering I think he moves a little bit better. Plus, I mean, him being a little bit shorter, obviously, kind of helps with that. But the one thing with Mara, like I love the passing highs, but I think his process can probably speed up just a little bit quicker because he does tend to hold on to it just a little bit too long. But he's also 7'3", so he's kind of able to just keep it away from guys that can't even like hold a threat to him because he's freaking 7'3", and especially this year, like UCLA was kind of tough and playing with Mick Cronin. That's a completely different situation, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but he was playing like I want to say 50% like around of the team's minutes last year. Like it wasn't a lot, and it's I don't it's not like fully similar this year, but like he'll get into foul trouble, and a lot of that is the slight frame, and but I really love like the profile and kind of the mold that he fits with like a guy like Donovan Clingan. And I think Clingan had more weight on him coming out of college, but I also think Mara as a passer is not fully cleared him, but like I think he's got a step on him at least in that department. And the touch like around the rim has been really solid, and the length and like the play finishing and all that is really good. And which is, I mean, that's what you want to see, and that returns top 10 value. That's a playoff starter. That's a guy that may potentially break the data bar website with like the lineups and the Wowie lineups, and you'll see freaking plus 10 net rating with him on and like plus 2 with him off. Like it's like there's a chance that he ends up within those talks like fairly soon. One guy that at least to go back to Ngongba on Twitter compared him to like or like the I guess the blueprint was like a Yusuf Nurkic, like a big bruiser that has good touch, and I think it could eventually step out, knock down a three, but also has really good passing feel, and I think Ngong was probably a slightly better athlete, and so and he's been really good on the glass as well. And then defensively, like you mentioned, I think it was like a 6.6 block percentage, and like he's just been solid in all areas, but his feel was kind of really good, and especially like paired up with Boozer, like that's a really nice pairing that John Shire's been able to deploy out there. But yeah, those two are
On that too.
could definitely return top 10.
Yeah, the block percentage thing, right? With Mara, right? Mara has a 12% block percentage and 4.7 blocks per 40, and then with Gongba, it's a only a 6% block percentage and 2 blocks per 40, right? And at face value, that would mean you're thinking, oh, this guy Mara is probably going to be a lot better, right? But I go back to people, I explain people with the Wemby example, right? This year, Wemby is having probably his best rim protection season ever, but the numbers are down, right?
Yeah.
So block percentage, your blocks is not going to be the total story. I think with Ganga, he's probably the better rim protector, especially aside a guy like Cam Boozer. You're seeing what is going to be in the league when you usually have that double big lineup. A lot of teams want to have that, right? So I definitely don't want the numbers to kind of lie there. I definitely believe that Gongwa is the better rim protector there. Both also are really great offensive rebounders. I mean, you would hope so for guys of those size. Um, but yeah, no, I definitely agree with what you're saying. I think one of the other key differences, the only key difference that I think I found was the rim, and you were talking about it with the touch and stuff like that. Mara has an 80% he's 80% at the rim, and Gongba is 70% at the rim, both having basically the same amount of their shots being assisted. I believe both at 69%. I don't know. Mara is at 68, so 1 percentage point lower. They're the same, right? So slightly
Yeah.
better touch around the rim. Mara's does kind of drop off a little bit against the top 50 quality teams, and they kind of even out, being a bit more similar. But still, um, the other thing I would like to mention is like the three ball. We talk about this with a lot of guys. If any big right can ever develop the three ball with those types of skill set, they become basically invaluable. Um, I don't really have too much to say about it, but just to mention it with Mar, I do like his mechanics. Both of these guys actually shoot a decent amount of free throws. Mar having a worse free throw percentage. Um, I do like Mara's mechanics a little bit more, and he shot a little bit better from downtown. Obviously, both these guys they're not shooting a lot of threes. They're not taking a lot of them. Not a big thing there, but just something to be of note. And also to your point about his processing speed, I definitely agree with that. I think on tape, like you mentioned, the highs being higher. Right, I remember one specifically. The baseline skip to the corner where he catches and then immediately turns and makes that read. Right, so you got those times where, like I mentioned, he's able to immediately make the read and see it, and then you have the other times where he catches and he kind of just right. So
Yeah. Yeah.
like you said, it's the highs. The highs are really what are going to be able to sell me. And even with, like, again, I go back to the comparison with a guy like a D Live, where there still is time, like you said, just because you're that size, that you can kind of just wait for a second and then make that read. So just the fact that he can and has shown the ability to do so, and should be able to develop that more. It's so extremely promising with a guy like that. Um, but with these two, I was really kind of just splitting hairs. I mean, it's very similar type of archetype, the same type of thing coming in the league. Both great rim protectors, both great on the boards, stuff like that, right? So it's just what you're preferring with there. Um, but yeah, that's kind of where I leave it with that.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I'd have to look and read more into this stuff, but like the lineups that Mars usually playing with, like he's usually out there with Morris Johnson and Yaxel, especially like a guy like Morris. Like he can't really, he's not a three shooter like consistently yet. So a lot of Mars touches are the post touches, and he doesn't get a lot in the middle. Like so, they're trying to single one side of the floor, at least what Dusty May's doing, their coach, and like a lot of his post touches will be towards that baseline. So he's kind of obviously him being 7'3", he can see all over that, but or see over pretty much anybody. So and singling to one side can kind of I think it helps Mara, but also like the spacing in general. Because if you put them in the middle, like they can immediately help off of Morez Johnson. Like that's and unless you just put them directly in the dunker spot. But regardless, like I think schematically and kind of like I don't want to say geometrically, but like that kind of adds at least putting him over on the block and towards that short baseline. Like I think that honestly, like geometrically, like that creates more space for him to be able to operate, and I think that's where he's been his best, and I think depending where he gets drafted, of course, with more shooting, I think that short roll could really be something that we see a lot more, especially from Mara. But
Now we get to the fun part.
oh
Um,
boy,
I will mention really quick. This is where I have my beer break, and it's simply just a
oh
skill
yeah,
difference. Uh, I just feel like all the guys above now are just a decent bit better than everybody else. Just simply just off the fact of what they've shown, what they can do, and stuff like that. Um, but in my seventh spot, I have A Cuff. You are a lot lower. Oh, I shouldn't say you weren't a lot lower, right? But you definitely have a lot more guys ahead of him than I think most people would. I mean, you go on Twitter, TikTok, whatever, right? Everybody, I've seen people trying to tell me that A Cuff's going one. That's delusional.
Kendrick Perkins.
Yeah, like you're pushing it. You are definitely pushing it. Um, and I think the two first things to mention, right, are the system. We talked about this with John Calipari. He is simply just going to breed elite guard play. Like this is what he does. He's going to put them in heavy pick and roll. He's going to give them heavy isolation. He's going to give them heavy minutes. He's going to push the tempo. He's going to want you to have more possessions. Like he is in a prime system for him to flourish, right? And then the other thing being the archetype issue. We've seen it this year. This year being the biggest example of it, right? Um, the undersized, smaller guard who has defensive woes. That like guys are just so much lower on that type of that type of archetype now. The only really main one flourishing is Jalen Brunson, right? And the main concern with him ever winning a championship as a number one option is because he is so bad defensively, right? I think he's still a top. He's either one of the two or top five worst defenders in the league, like statistically, right?
Yeah.
So those are the two really big concerns with him, and the numbers also back that up, right? Um, the steal percentage, it was at like when the graphic went up with him comparing to other guards, it was at like 1.5, 1.4. It's down even further now to 1.3, which in this system it should be a lot more, right? He's only averaging zero point 0.9 steals per 40. Like that is such a low amount for a guard, especially when I'm now increasing the like volume. You can't even average a steal. Like that is a bit ridiculous, right? And the guys who were in the graphic who were being compared to with that type of similar steal percentage are guys like Bub Carrington and Cam Thomas and like Brandon Knight. Like that is not the category of defender that you want to be, associated with, especially with a guy
Yeah.
like Cam Thomas, right? So
Yeah.
ridiculously good offensively, right? But you're just so horrible for me offensively that it just does not matter, right?
Yeah.
I mean, literally, we saw him get waived, and then he's on the Bucks now, doing he's hooping, but he's not
Yeah.
impact winning at a high level, right?
Yeah.
So the thing is, obviously, it sounds like I'm bashing him a good bit, right? But I am truly high on him. I was borderline trying to put him above Michael and Flemings, and we went back and forth on that, but I just couldn't do it at the end of the day. Like I even dropped him. I first had him at my list above Michael, but I just had to drop him lower. Um, so to just kind of get into some of the stuff with him that I do really like, uh, or I should say, the reason that I kind of a bit higher on him is I can see him being a guy like I gave you the Collier example, and then the Fred VanVleet, right? He is not anywhere close to what Fred is, but we see with a guy like Fred the ability to pressure the ball, especially at his best, be able to score the ball, get guys in spot, like hit guys in spots, and defend the ball, right? And then with Collier, he has with the playmaking feel and stuff like that as a Collier, but he can at least knock down a jumper, which Collier cannot do. So the first thing first, as my really high thing with him, is the three ball, right? The three ball, he's having 73% of them assisted to him, but the part of that being is a lot of them being off of movement. The biggest thing I go to is the Duke game. That's really what sticks in my memory is him, spotting up, curling off of, a double pin down or something like that. That's something that's going to translate to the league, and I'm extremely, high on. The off the dribble, not so much. Like he has these streaks where he can be like the Alabama game is a prime example, right? The ability to pull up from two, pull up from three, looking amazing. But I don't have the numbers, but I know they are not great because I can see a prime example right now. I'm watching the Arkansas Florida game. Doesn't look that great, right?
Yeah.
Um, so, but even I think the other thing too is that he does do a lot of self creation, right? 26% of his rim attempts are assisted. His twos, 20% are assisted, right? And he's 43% on those twos and 60% at the rim. Now, the rim isn't great, but he's still getting to it, and it's still good percentage, and especially the twos is a solid percentage, and a lot of them being self-created off the bounce, stuff like that. And against some of these top 50 quality teams, the twos are, and the totality of twos, right? So including his rim and his pull-up twos and all of that, is at 54%. So at the exact same that it is normally. And then the 3-point drops off by 4%, but it's still, he's shooting 40% from three against top, these quality teams, and 60% true shooting. So not having too much of a drop off offensively, and I think that's reflected, that lined up with the eye test, right? Like, again, I mentioned the Duke game, the Alabama game, when he played Flemings and Michael, both of those matchups against Louisville and Houston, right? That's one of the really big things I do like about him is he shows up in some of those bigger moments, some of those bigger games. Right now today, not having that one of those days. But in a majority of them, he
Yeah.
has been the guy to step up and say, I'm going to play better against some of these better teams, and I want to face these guys, right? And just the baseline numbers per 40. 25 points per 40 on 18 attempts, 50% from the field, 44% from three, 61% true shooting, 7 assists per 40 on 2.2 turnovers, right? So only 27% usage rating. So the numbers are pretty solid, right? You would expect the usage to be maybe a little bit higher, but he's producing at really great, like he's giving you great production and being efficient at the same time. Again, though, to mention the system is going to be buffering that a little bit, right? The per 40, he's playing 34 minutes a game already anyways, right? So he's playing a lot, so it makes sense that the production is there. One of the other negatives too, though, with him is the free throw rate, especially for a guy his size, right? Like going back to the Jalen Brunson example, the reason that he is so good is the fact that he can get to the line, he can generate contact, right? That's part of the reason why he can be so efficient offensively is because he can get to the line, right? And especially also to mention again the 3-point shooting, specifically the pull-up 3-point shooting is what makes a guy like that so efficient and so great and dynamic offensively. So and another other really major number I wanted to mention was the isolation. Um, Acuff is just so much better in the pick and roll, right? And I think that especially is reflected in his playmaking, even more so in the scoring, but especially the playmaking, like the ability to just come off and, you know, I don't have the graphic, but we mentioned to it. I think it was like 3 or 4 rim assists per 75, right? Which a lot of that is like lobs and stuff like that, and some in transition. But the ability to kind of just get downhill off of a screen, put guys in a bad spot, and just pick them apart. Much better there versus in isolation. Point 0.8 isolation points, 15% of his possessions being for an isolation, and there's a 17% change from his isolation from the pick and roll to isolation possessions, right? So not that great, and especially as a smaller guard, you're going to want to be at least generating, 1.1 in the isolation game. So that's kind of the spiel on him. That's kind of the main thing I could go over him. The other thing too, again, is just the intangible stuff, right? He doesn't have, well, I should say intangible, but like the God-given gifts. He's not that tall. He isn't that brolic. He doesn't use his size too much, right? Like the shot diet as I'm watching him play these games, there is a lot of tough shots. Like I go back to the Alabama game, the last shot he takes is a like running one-legged floater over an outstretched arm for a game, right? Like he made another one earlier in the game, right, where it's going to the left side instead, and it's a floater from I think it's like 12 feet, and he makes those over an outstretched arm. But the shot quality is going to be a factor, coming into the league. How are you going to still be able to make these kinds of shots against an even better defense? So that's one of the things with him that also is a bit of a knock for me. But I just think overall the reason that I can be so high on him, especially considering the archetype, is simply that he is giving me the production in a good system. Even though yes, he's in a good system, you have to still be a good player to produce, right? Like he is not some of these other like Kentucky guards that have come through and stuff like that. Like the guys who have been in those systems and have thrived to this level have still come into the league and be elite, right? And I think with him, if my floor with you is still a supercharged Isaiah Collier, that is still going to be valuable, right? Like a Collier can be good if he simply just had the jump shot and can be that good offensively, especially as a backup, right? So that's kind of where I stand it with him. And again, also the thing that's extremely promising is that he plays up to competition. He plays still well against these better quality guys. So my concerns there are a little bit lesser because he's able to do that. But I'll go ahead and let you get into yours and maybe a little bit on why you're not so high on Acuff.
Yeah, and he's probably he's definitely moving up, at least for me. And I think a lot of that stuff is justified justified like what you're saying. Like he's got a good profile, and I think I don't want to call it like a concern because I genuinely think like he's got a good shot to last in the league and be an impactful player. I just like there's some guys like you mentioned like have him going top 3, and that's where I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
I can't get behind that. And the reason I don't have him like top 10 is because there's a lot of I don't know if you do you fit like not like fit, but like, do you think he's like a lead guard, or like what's kind of like the
I think at his if he reaches the apex, right, he is a lead guard, right?
okay?
The apex is the Jalen Brunson type archetype,
Yeah,
um, and it's if he gets to that, then yeah, like going back to kind of some of his numbers, he's been getting better as the year progresses, right? Taking more pull up threes, getting to the line more, turning it over less, being a bit better. I want to say not necessarily a bit better defensively, but I've at least seen more effort and motor on that end, right? So if he continues on that path, then yes, he's a lead guard. But I will say the floor with me more is like a backup, like a really solid backup guard, which I think people undervalue in a day. Like
yeah,
the ability to draft a guy to come in and be your backup, and like just based because depth is key nowadays. I don't think people really are understanding that. Like the best teams in the league are the teams with depth, like the Cavs, the Spurs, OKC, the Pacers last year, right? So adding to that depth is going to be a big thing, and he can come in and be that, right? So but I will say though, right? If I think with you, at least I think this is what you're gonna say, is if I'm looking for more for lead guards, and I want to basically like I'm more I think that they're more likely to produce higher value and be that lead guard. I'm definitely not gonna be as high on Acuff then in that scenario.
yeah. I mean that's pretty much like essentially where I'm at. Like regardless, he's probably gonna move up at least for me because I mean he's at I want to say 17 right now for me, but it's below like guys that I think could really return like impact like much higher impact value and a lot of like it's tough because he's gonna have to be another guard, smaller guard that ends up with like an outlier development path, and which like not that the harsh not that it's the harsh truth like work ethic is that's not in the stat sheet like stuff like that. That's why I don't want to fully like rely on the spreadsheets for that, and because work ethic like that stuff is different, and obviously the Calipari tree and history there is pretty reliable, but
Well, I'll just mention that though is that I do think there's some promise there, um, just with kind of his career path, like choosing to not go to a public school and go to IMG early, choosing
yeah.
to go play under um, John Calipari in Arkansas when he's kind of buns, but DJ Wagner is still there. Malik Thomas had already committed there as another like wing guard type, right? So the willingness to like choose to be in some of the hardest scenarios, right? Even though yes, that is going to benefit him, right, being that type of system, but the willingness to say I am going to put myself against the best and I want to play the best, it does give me a lot of promise on that type of like intangible stuff.
Yeah, and like I'm looking at a poster right now of the freaking 2019 Magic team, like DJ Augustine staring me right in the soul. Like that's
Ah, bro, DJ
like that.
Augustine,
Like and DJ Augustine, he crafted out a
Queen
freaking
Cross of Doom and Despair.
yeah 10+ year career. Like if Acuff ends up as similar in that type of realm, but I think he's more talented than him. Like that's a good NBA player, and that's a 10+ years and really impactful for a good portion of that career. So, regardless, like he's going to be a good player. I could definitely be a little bit higher on him. I just the lead guard tendencies are a little bit
Worrisome.
iffy for me. But I'm going to quickly go over Sturts because obviously that's my guy. But obviously Northwest Missouri State legend with his current coach Ben McCollum. I want to say I don't know if they won the national title when he was there, but he they went to Drake the next year. They won against Mizzou. Like but a lot of what he does, and especially their offense, Ben McCollum, like they're like bottom 10 in pace. Like they run a really niche, like really weird system. Like they play super slow and but deliberate, and they want to get a good shot every time down. And I wish there was like I wish we had Taylor Wyman for some of these stats, but like there's a true usage percentage, and at least for the NBA, which gives you like a or it gives you a much better number of like how often is this guy genuinely used, not just like how much he has the ball. And Sturts is one of those guys like true usage, he'd probably be like upwards of like 40%. Like, and his profile has gotten like way better in terms of like turnover aversion. He takes care of the ball. He's an excellent shot maker with really high 3 point volume, and a lot of the screen reliance issues is where that's the reason why I don't have him like above these next two. Which I mean that's fine, but and but regardless, like the production that he's been able to carry over from level to level and continuing to produce against better competition, I think like the sustained production there is like why I'm so high on him, and especially like over a guy like I guess Acuff for example, because we talked about it, and I think at least the willingness defensively, because if you like I don't know how many people watched it, but like when they played Nebraska when they were ranked top 10 like last week, and it was a grinded out game, and no team was really shooting that well, but Sturts was not necessarily having his best offensive game, but defensively he was chasing Price Sanford around for 40 minutes. Like, and if you've watched Sanford, he's got the quickest trigger in all of college basketball, and he's completely chasing him off of screens and while still having to carry a heavy workload on the offensive end, and he shoulders just about every single offensive possession. But I think the main part, especially this year, I don't know. I wish you'd think I'd know the other guard's name on the Iowa team, considering how much I watch him. But the lefty, obviously I don't know his name, but like this year, Sturts has been deployed more off the ball, and you get to see a lot more of that. And he's just, I think the decisiveness and the processing speed is just so high level to the point where like it's not going to matter what type of system he's played in. He's going to figure out how to make an impact in the NBA. But plus, the last thing I wanted to mention, like he fits like this similar type of like statistical profiles of like Weber State, Dame, and then Brunson coming out. So if you were higher on them coming out, you should theoretically probably be higher on Sturts as well. So I mean, I could probably go on for hours. I don't want to, but he's my guy. I think he's gonna definitely carve out a pretty long career and definitely make an impact wherever he goes.
No, I'm definitely with you on that. I think like definitely he's not the same type of player, but you look at a guy like Tyler Kolak this year, and obviously Cam Spencer the last couple of years, where
Yeah.
a little bit of these older players struggling a little bit, and maybe in the little early spurts, and guys not being as high on them, but just over time are just come in and be highly effective in the league. Especially Kolak, obviously he struggles because he's playing in a lot of guards around him, but when he comes in and he produces at a high level, right? So I definitely think that with Sturts, he is probably better than both of them. I think you would agree with that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just ability to come in, if he's being much better than them, he's going to be extremely valuable in the league. Um, I think my only thing with them is just with older guys, it's always just kind of a little bit harder to judge. But like you mentioned, like Dame and Jalen Brunson, they were also both older guys and are some of the most elite players we have in our league now. So like again, I think that's really the only thing I kind of have with them is the tax. You kind of mentioned also the high usage. It can be a little bit there, but there's not really much for me to harp on against him. I think especially some of the numbers are just utterly ridiculous, and especially in the pick and roll, like his points per possession are just utterly nuts. But yeah, moving on from there, in my sixth spot, I have
Yeah.
Michael Michael Brown Jr. Um,
We need to fly through this. Been in over an hour.
Bro, when you're not trying to talk basketball for 3 hours, you just don't love the game, bro.
I guess not.
Trust me, bro. Our brother. When we get to DP, there will be 30 minutes of me just yapping about why I love DP.
What if we
But
didn't do that? We just talked about the 3 point bomber.
11, dude, he's so ridiculous. Why go to rim? I can shoot three.
And why go to rim?
But no, with Michael, we were talking about it before. The biggest thing with him that really stands out with me is the shot diet, right? We're talking about absolute bomb from deep. It is part of the system there too. They are telling him to get him up, but his willingness to just kind of pull whatever, right? It's kind of tanked his percentages, especially early on. But when he is hitting, he is hitting. It was a thing also in like high school and the USA team stuff like that. He can be really efficient from there, and especially if he's taking maybe probably a better like his shot selection changes a little bit, you should see it jump right back up. Um, we mentioned it essentially his shot diet being like a James Harden light, right? Like he is not taking a lot of pull up twos and those kind of intermediate shots, right? Like he is getting to the line a lot, he's getting to the rim a lot, and he's just going to take a lot of threes, right? The most basically as efficient of an offense as you can get, right? Um, the handle's always been it looks pretty solid as well for him. I would say he doesn't really have the pace of a guy like Acuff. Like with Acuff, the way he beats a guy off the dribble a lot of the time is like I'm gonna kind of stop and start go right. With Michael's a little bit more of I'm kind of just gonna beat you sometimes. Like I am just
Yeah,
faster than you, and part of that too is he's like sneaky athletic. Like definitely not sneaky athlete like Ian Kennedy, but
bro.
uh, he he has a couple of those where he just blows by a guy and just gets off the floor so fast and punches it, right? And I'd love to see more of that with him.
Yeah,
Um, Looking at the per 40 numbers, 25 points per 40 on 17 attempts, almost 18, 41% from the field and 35% from three, but getting to the line 8 times per 40 and shooting 84% at the free throw line. Uh, he's also averaging 6.4 assists per 40 on, sadly, 4.3 turnovers, so a little bit iffy there. He also has higher usage, surprisingly. I'd love to see the true usage with a lot of these guys. I wish I had it. But 31% usage rating. Against top 50 quality teams, he actually gets better, shockingly, especially considering like his shot diet. Um, oh, my bad. Uh, he does drop a little bit. I put a plus instead of a negative because I'm an idiot, but it doesn't drop by that much. The three ball goes from 35 to 33. The twos in total are going. They're actually at 50. So the total field goal percentage probably isn't going to look as sexy, but the just twos in totality are not dropping off by much. Um, he's 65% at the rim as well, and only 28% of those are being assisted. And the other thing too as well is he's only 23% on twos. Well, we mentioned this before. He's not shooting a lot of them. The volume is low on those, and only 11% of them are assisted. So I'm not as worried with that as I was with a guy like Wagler. It's just not a shot he really takes. And again, it's even like it's basically all self-created. Um, and the threes as well are only 50% of them are being assisted. So he's taking obviously as bounces you can get 50-50 of off the catch and stuff like that and just pull up like we talked about it before. The He loves a little hang pull or whatever, quick dribble into them. So and just in general, like the thing that really put him above Acuff, the more I was thinking about it, is going to be the translation for him. Like he's just bigger, stronger, faster, right? Like the fact that he is not going to have as many issues as an Acuff might, and he's also just shown me more on that defensive end, right? Like he just doesn't have as much concerns on that end as a guy like that. And the isolation has just been better, 1.14 on isolations. So and he also has even more volume on those, 16% of his possessions being those, and a lower turnover percentage. So I think that's really just the biggest thing with me is that he kind of does all the things that I like with Acuff with less of the defensive issues, and then just has all the other God given gifts, right? And I think the other also thing with him that's underrated is his playmaking, right? Like again, I go back kind of to the Harden light, but the ability to get downhill and leverage my ability to, either basically get to the rim and then just rip it to the corner, right? Like there's a good couple times. He also
yeah,
does it off 2 feet a lot, which I like, right? Where he does do the jump pass, but I'm gonna get to my 2 feet, look, jump, and then just skip it to the corner before anybody's looking, right?
yeah,
Um, so just in general, he has the simplest way I could put it is he has a game that I believe is going to just translate so much better to the league, and I just the only thing I think I really wish I could see a bit more with him um, is maybe just attack a little bit more and maybe just develop a bit more of the intermediate range, right? Like you don't want to be a super high variance player, right? Like we see that with him right now, where the highs with him are stupid high when he's just on a burner, but the lows are also stupidly low because of your like shot selection, right? We talk about this in the league now that high 3 point volume and it being the main part of your shot diet leads to a lot of shot variance and not shot variance, sorry, but just production variance and how elite you can be on a night to night basis, right? So I would like to see him develop a bit more of a game that's going to be consistent because if he does, he now jumps from being like kind of just this solid guy in the league who can to a guy who can be a genuinely elite guard talent. But that's
Yeah,
really all I can say with them.
yeah. He's definitely got more of the lead guard tendencies, at least from like a statistical profile and kind of like watching it on tape as well. Like I know I mentioned it before. Like obviously you want to see the intermediate game kind of get implemented a little bit more, especially because his free throw rate's been dropping a little bit. But like the intermediate stuff, it won't really matter if his free throw rates through the roof. Like if he's getting downhill and then he is creating opportunities for himself at the line, like that's really valuable. And I'm curious to see like how long his wingspan is, especially like the Team USA stuff when I was watching that
Yeah,
over the summer.
Flemings, they just look so long out there, man. Pause, whoa. But
Yeah, yeah.
they're just
Like
super lengthy out there, man.
they look like NBA guards, like that type of like the anthros. Like that's like what you want to see, I guess. But he's definitely somebody I'd like to see paired up with like Cooper Flag or a team like the Nets, where Jordy Fernandez is so bullish on 3 point rate and getting quality shots down just about every single possession, especially a lot of threes. But yeah, both of us, well, the next three are both the same thing, or the last four are. So I mean, Flemings is like he was off to a really hot start, and I feel like he's kind of stuck at five right now because I think the guys like below just haven't really shown me enough to the point where I can have them over Flemings because I've really liked what I've seen with his highs because I think in terms of like getting to your spot, I think he's been one of the better ones this throughout this process. But also his scoring process is like I don't want to start out with a negative, but like his scoring process has been kind of odd. Like he's like you want to see more threes, especially out of a guy that like a lot of people consider to be a point guard. But I also think like we just talked about the other day, like I think he may scale better as an off guard, as a guy like Case and Wallace and Edgecombe and guys within that sort of archetype and mold to where like I think he's probably the best in the class of like already being on the run right before you're about to attack off the catch. Like maybe a lot of that's from Kelvin Sampson because obviously that dude's obviously one of the best coaches that we've ever seen. But Flemings is one of the better ones, like I just mentioned. Like as soon as he like even before he's starting to attack, he's already moving. Like that's something that you really love to see out of a young player, but especially with his explosion and kind of like his smoothness. Oh my gosh, his smoothness downhill. Like he's got real craft there and his ability to kind of just raise up. Like I don't think he's really going to dunk on you consistently because he definitely has to fill out his frame, but he's really decisive once he is getting downhill, and I think his vision and he's been really good keeping the ball or with like ball security and the efficiency in the mid range. So I'm really curious to see like where he lands because I feel like that's going to tell like the whole story and kind of like where like how he'll be deployed either as a true one or kind of off the ball, similar to the guys that I just mentioned. But
Yeah, I mean, to your point, we talked about it before with him being basically a supercharged Kaysen, right? Like I think that is going to be his best role. Um, I mean, he just has all of the tendencies that you want to see for an off-ball guy, and then maybe can come in and get some on-ball reps, right? Like maybe not a lead guard at any point, like you said, but just if he's being alongside another lead guard and then can kind of take off some of the weight at some point, um, that is probably going to be his best role. Um, and the other thing too, you were mentioning him being kind of stuck at five. this is where my other tier break is before between the 4 and 5, right between Caleb and him. And I think what it really was for me is the archetype difference, right? Like the other four guys, we have above him, you know, three of them are all supercharged. Like I believe Caleb he's either 6'9" or 6'10", and then the rest of them, besides DP, and even DP is big. It's super big for his archetype, right? They're all just these big, super versatile, um, dumb athletic with God given talent that are all just super skilled, right? Like as good as you want to be, right? Unless you are just a supreme, 6'3", 6'4" guard, you are you can't really reach this tier of what they are, right? Like you can't make up what AJ is as a 6'10" shot creator, right? Like if you're 6'4" or below, you just can't do the things that he does. And that's kind of what the thing was for me, separating these guys. That it's just hard to put him above a guy like a Caleb Wilson, because Caleb Wilson at his high is going to just be so much better than anything Flemings is, right? Um, but with Flemings though, like you were talking about, he had a hot start, but I'm still just super high on him as a player, and it's mainly because he can come in and impact winning. Like you mentioned again, the Casey Wallace example, he can come in, and I believe like if whoever drafts him that first year, you're going to see a major team in that, see a major difference in that team simply because of what he provides. The major concern obviously is the 3 point rate. Like I wish he got more up. He does like to get to the intermediate. Oh my God, the intermediate range a lot. That's kind of his bread and butter a lot of the times. But I think some of the things that really stand out, first of all, is the transition. 1.46 transition points per possession and 76 effective field goal percentage. Oh my God, effective field goal percentage in transition. Like basically, if you get out and run, he's just going to turn it into a bucket, like majority of the time. Um, he also has a 40% drive rate. So the guy, like, he just does not settle, right? Whether it's in transition or just in the half court, the guy is going to get to the rim, and you're going to love that. Unfortunately, the free throw rate kind of doesn't really reflect that. Uh, Almost five is at 4.6, so per 40. So, but he does knock him down when he gets there, 85% from there. So it doesn't really reflect his ability to get there, but when he does, he is efficient from there, right? Like 60% at the rim, 24% of them being assisted, right? Like he can get to the rim however he feels like, right, and produce. And I just wish the free throw rate was there to kind of go along with that, because he'd probably be so much better offensively if it was. And also, you mentioned the protecting of the ball, right? He's averaging 6.5 assists per 40 and only 2.4 turnovers per 40, right? That's better than any other guy on this list besides DP, and DP doesn't have the assists to go along with it, right? So, and he also has similar usage at 2.6, oh my God, 26.8. So, I'm definitely there with you on that. He's also averaging 2 steals per 40. So the other thing I don't think you harped on a little bit, didn't harp on too much, was the defensive end. The guy has
Yeah.
just been elite there, and a part of that is the fact of who he's playing for at Houston. Right, that system, that's what they value. We need to be good on that end, and that is a good thing. He has the high motor, he has the effort, he has the feel on that end, and on the offensive end, he also has that feel as well. Right, so just in general, right? Like just basically a picture perfect, like what's the word? Accompanying guard, or like just someone
Yeah.
to like
Yeah.
add along allied somebody, and it should be reflected in that from day one. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's all I have to go with that there. Uh, I actually think I'm curious to hear more what you say about Wilson, because you seem, as we've talked, you've seen a bit more like up and down on him
Yeah.
throughout the year. Like one point you had him above AJ, and now, you know,
Yeah. Shout out Ed, Houston legend, Ed. But yeah. Anyway, Caleb Wilson. I had him honestly on my last board. I had him above AJ, and it was a lot of like AJ was just he was just dipping against comp. Like that was kind of where I was, and honestly, I could still see the argument for him over him, and I mean I have him in the same tier, so there's definitely something there. I think a lot of what Wilson does, especially early on, or will do in early on in the league, is playing off of guys and maybe just a little bit of creation, especially like the mid post. Like that's where he gets a bunch of his work. And when he does get high percentage looks, that's where I'm a lot more like positive with it. But like if you watch the Duke game, we were just talking about it like the other day, and like, if you're watching that through a draft lens, and like a lot of those shots are just like low percentage. And I mean, he was heating up and hitting them, which is ideal. But
It's just
I would,
unfortunate.
yeah, I would have just preferred to see maybe him being able to create for himself just a little bit better. But and I think a lot of that, like he's still, I think he'll be 19 on draft night probably, so he's still filling out his frame and still tightening the handle, of course. But one comp that I kind of liked from him was Jermaine O'Neal, and like I don't think like physicality wise, I don't know if he's ever going to get there, just considering like not like the era he was playing, but like Jermaine O'Neal, he was built, so like that's kind of tough to get to. But I mean Wilson, he's been a nightmare in transition. Like he's a lob threat. The motor on both ends has been really high, and that was kind of like the big part that when I did have him above AJ was that was the main part, and kind of like the passing field to add on to that was a lot higher, at least at the time. But Wilson, regardless, I mean he's definitely going to be a playoff starter. Like that's I feel like he's definitely within that pathway. Like he has the blueprint for it. Just as a guy with really good touch in the mid range, but I am worried slightly about like he's just not taking threes really, and I do wonder like where he lands and like how often like the coaches are telling him to just shoot it. Like if he lands in a situation that's like Washington, or maybe not Washington because they got a few guys that can win next year, but like with like a really bad team, like I'll say Sacramento, like I'm sure they'll be telling him to just if you got an open look, please take it. Like we need you to hit your high. Like that's
Speaking of
that's
that,
that's yeah.
to
But
that point, against the top 50 quality teams this year, only has shot 11 threes, right, in those
yeah.
games. And he's only made one, right? So minus 16% from downtown. And then just overall, 85% of his threes this year have been assisted. And he's still only shooting 25% from down there. And I mentioned this the other day, too, as well, is that I'm a bit worried about, like, it's not a really major concern, but just kind of the mechanics of it. Like, they slow down and they falter a little bit the farther he gets out from the basket, right? Even in the pull up and like the back to the basket fade, I could see it a little bit. And then once it gets behind the line, it's just there's a hitch. Everything slows down. Like I said, the mechanics falter a little bit. So I'm a little bit worried on that, but you can continue.
No, you're good. That was pretty much it. There was one comp that I honestly kind of liked was Siakam, like to an extent. If he can like, because I think Siakam was an older guy coming out, and he was immediately to the G League. I can't remember like what his full path was, but like there's some stuff that's like reminiscent of what he does with the whole spin fade and the length that he plays with, and kind of just the touch that he has in the intermediate range. So, I mean, there's a chance that he ends up hitting that high, especially offensively, but which is really tough. But defensively, like that's his calling card, and that's where he'll be able to make an impact. But the offensive blueprint is like it's clear, so that's why there's a chance that he ends up returning like better value than Devonta at some point. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I will say, I think for me, you mentioned like your tier thing. I did have my tier. I had the break between the Bonska and Cam. I'm gonna switch that. I'm gonna actually put it between AJ and Caleb because I do think the more I've thought about it, I think AJ is in the tier with those three guys, especially just because of his peak, right? But the reason I have Wilson outside of it, I think, is because of that fact, right? Like the value he can return and how good he can be is there, the blueprint's there. But just simply compared to the other three guys at the top of this class, he just does not have the polish and skill set yet, right? Like when you watch him, the handle is a bit loose. He also just kind of looks stiff as he's moving. Like you look at a guy like AJ, we talk about it. AJ just moves different at that size. It is utterly ridiculous when you watch it. There's no reason a guy that size should move it. It's kind of like the KD where like as you're watching, it does not make sense that someone that big, that lengthy, right, is able to move that type of way. And it's even different, even more different with AJ. Like it's just so fluid Like I remember you saying this before, like with Paul George, the thing that's so crazy is how fluid his hips are. With AJ, it is how fluid everything is, right?
Yeah.
Like it looks almost over exaggerated at times. But that's really the separator for me with Wilson, I think, and the rest of these guys. I mentioned the jump shot concerns, but you did mention the motor. Like the motor is really there, especially on both ends. Like the guy runs the floor very hard. He tries to get it on both ends of the floor, and he can make plays like all of the time. He can always be in the right spot and do stuff like that. Um, I did also mention before one of the concerns when we were talking about it is like kind of where he gets some of his stuff at, and you kind of mentioned it with him, in the Duke games, settling a lot for these turnarounds and other stuff like that, and just in the games in general, right? Like, obviously I watched some of the tape, but to start off some of the highlight stuff, a lot of it are just these dump downs and him being in the stuff like that. Like, obviously that's good. You're going to be in good positioning as a guy at that size, but for what we want you to be, we can get that from like Amara and Gonwo and these other guys. We don't need you to be a dump down guy all the time, right? And there's just too much of that sometimes for me. Um, so that's just kind of how I feel with that. But also for the defensive thing, 1.9 steals per 40 and 1.8 blocks per 40, so 3.7 stocks per 40. Like the numbers kind of reflect that. I don't have the percentages on like steal and stuff like that, but again, just on tape, the motor is there. Also, say another big positive with him for me is the free throw attempts. He's averaging 9.6 per 40. I think that's more than AJ. I'm pretty sure it's more than AJ. Oh no, AJ's at 10. Oh my god. But the similar thing that he has with AJ, where like he can get to that, and that's always going to be efficient offense. I don't want to hear people talk about free throw merchant with any type of person. If you can get to the line, that is always going to be a good thing. And he's shooting 70% at the line, so still solid. Overall, has a 60% true shooting, and he's averaging 25 per 40 on only 15 attempts, which is kind of nuts.
Yeah.
Um, and then I talked about earlier against the top 50 quality teams, his twos are only dropping off by 4%, and his true shooting drops off by 5. So a little bit, you mentioned it with AJ and him dropping against quality opponents. Wilson does a little bit, but it's nothing like too much that I'm like, it's absurd for me to worry about. But I think kind of all the other stuff you hit on with Wilson, I do really like him though, especially because of the motor, right? Like I haven't seen that with AJ yet, and I think coming into the league, that could be one of the big factors that's in career trajectory and stuff like that. But now we can get into the really actual fun part, which is the most ridiculous top three I think I've ever seen, maybe besides like Braun and Wade and
Yeah.
Carmelo. Uh, I guess we could just start with AJ, and then we can get into the DP versus Cam. With
Yeah.
AJ, really the only knock it is two things with him. Maybe I guess three, right? It is the shot diet sometimes with him, right? Like the rate at what he takes things and like prone to shot chucking, the motor, right? Like he just does not have the motor, and how he plays against comp, right? Those are the really biggest three things with them, and with the other two, like there's no kind of concerns with that. Maybe like with DP and his playmaking, but there's not as much to be worried about. I feel with them. To really start with that point with it against top 50 quality teams, right? 51% on his twos, 36% on his threes, and a 57% true shooting. So he drops by 7% on his twos. He drops by almost 5% on his true shooting, right? His normal numbers, just in general, 53% from the field, 36% from downtown, and 62% true shooting. And obviously one of his biggest tools is getting to the line 10 times per 40, which is just absurd, right? Like that is always going to be valuable offense. Um, but just in general, like you can watch, like today, I'm watching him against, I believe it's West Virginia. Like when you put guys into his lanes, you show him more bodies when he's not getting to the line as much. He struggles. Like he struggles against guys who are closer to that NBA level defense, and that is just the truth, right? And we saw it against, like, perfect example is him against DP in that game, right? I think people kind of over exaggerate, him outplaying him because they were trying to double AJ, and of course, DP was picking on him a little bit, right? But it is a good example there with the fact that the more that you basically as he starts to see these tougher coverages, he is just not the same player, right? And that's really where it is with me. And then as he's not doing those things and he kind of drops off, the defense, at least from what I've seen on tape, the defense gets worse. Like he doesn't try sometimes to impact the game in other ways. Like he is prone to shot chucking. It will happen. I believe it was the Arizona game where he's playing against these top teams and simply just starts to get into this mode of I just got to shoot my way out of it, you know, and that's just not what you want to do. Um, he is actually a solid passer a lot of the time when he's like keeping his head up and looking to make those reads, but he just gets into those modes sometimes and he's just getting them up, getting them up, getting them up. Right? It's a 32% usage, one of the higher parts we'll talk about out of this top 10, and it's just something I don't want to see with his tendencies and stuff like that. Like it goes back to high school. I was mentioning this to you as you watch him played in high school, right? He did not have the motor on the defensive end. He whines to refs, right? As he's in these tougher scenarios, seeing tougher coverages, he doesn't play as well, and he doesn't ramp it up in other facets of the game, right? So that's really the biggest things with him. Um, it reminds me kind of as Ace Bailey. I will mention this now. He is just 100 times better than Bailey was, right? Like he does so much more things, and obviously doesn't have the loose, stiff handle. But it is like that where I'm worried about his playmaking a little bit. Definitely not as much as DP, but I'm more worried there, and the defense is just not there. And again, the competition thing. Some of the other stuff though, just in general, like the other side of the positives and why I will say that I can see him being one or two, whatever, right, is that I do truly believe he has the highest peak out of all of these guys, like by far and away. Like AJ at his best is like this freak of nature defender who's T-Mac on offense. Like it is just stupid absurd what he could possibly be. Um, and just like we talk about the fluidity, how he moves on the court, like just I'm gonna hang tween cross, blow by a defender, and I'm gonna go punch it on somebody, right? Like there's not a lot of guys you can see who can do that, and he just attacks the rim with such like aggression a lot of the time. He's so forceful. He just gets to spots. Um, like it truly is like a wonder to watch a lot of the time with him. It is just truly absurd, right? And the numbers reflect it. It is ridiculous. The per 40, right? He's playing 33 per game, but at the per 40, 29 points per 40 and on 19 attempts, right? I'll talk about the efficiency already. Utterly ridiculous. He is turning it over 3 times to the 4 assists per 40, but it's still been solid. And I'm not too worried about the play. Like I am worried about the playmaking, but the turnover numbers and stuff like that, not as much. And again, with a comparison to a guy like DP and Cam still solid, and with DP, I'll get to it. The playmaking is it is very concerning to be honest with you, right? But just in general, 70%, 76% at the rim, only 20% assisted, 45% on twos, only 13% of them are assisted. Like the guy is simply just generating offense by himself so much, especially in the intermediate area attacking the rim, that is just genuinely ridiculous, right? And I'm going to value that very high. With DP, I think it's a little bit better. That's why I have him higher. Um, and just in general, the only other kind of two major concerns I might have are kind of his drop off in ISOs. He's at 1.1 points per possession in the pick and roll, and then only 0.9 in the isolation. So he's dropping off by 17%. That's the change there. And his 3-point rate is only at a 23.6%. So he's not taking a lot of them, right? It's that is kind of a little bit of a worry for me is, is it going to like how much is that going to be an issue with him? I don't know if it's too big of a thing to be concerned about, right? Because he does take them. He is willing to take them. He shoots them efficiently, and obviously the mechanics and everything else is there. Um, but yeah, just those three main things are the reason why I have him below. But I will say there is a very real world where this guy goes number one and he makes it look stupid that this was ever a conversation. Like legitimately, that is the peak this guy can reach. Um, like I remember I was watching Nerd Sesh and they're like talking about it, like it's just I don't know if I've quite seen a player ever with this combination of like just tools and skill set, and I don't think that's an exaggeration to say with him.
Yeah. One thing like specifically like especially with BYU and what Kevin Young has done because I mean it's his second year there now as their head coach, and last year you're playing with like, or not playing with, but like having a guy like Yegor Gilman who's been a decent rookie, but like specifically him, like last year they were one of the most high volume 3 point teams in the country, with 47.6 of their shots being attempted from three, which was the 25th highest in the country. And this year, it's taken like a complete 180. I'm literally just reading it off the tip off. Like they just put a post out, and now they rank in the bottom 60 in the nation in assist rate, and they're below average in 3 point rate. So like this offense is structured around him and what he likes to do, and AJ specifically, of course. But I think it may have updated after today, but I think his 3 point rate was like, I forget what you said, like 26, but right now it's like 24% of his shots are 3 pointers. Like we need to see more, but like you said, like he moves different. Like it's there's some guys like, especially with like, not to go off on a tangent, like the NFL draft, like there's particular receivers that just move completely different. And AJ, when it translates to basketball, it's you can just tell, like he's super long strides and hip fluidity, ankle flexion, like he's got it all. Like biomechanic majors are like drooling over this guy if they actually watched him. Like it's kind of weird, but like it's just super impressive to see somebody at this size and moving like how he does. And one other number that was like kind of ridiculous, like 74% of his total field goals made are self-created. Like like they're like he's like the most obvious, like maybe not the most obvious, but pretty close to like being one of the more obvious like 24, 25 point per game scores in the league. Like at some point he's going to get there. The defensive concerns are there though. Like the Iowa State game was cool. He locked up Milan Silovic, like one of the best shooters in the country, but that dude can't move. All he does is shoot. Like I need to see it more consistently. Like that's the separator for me between obviously the top two guys. Just the commitment on that end, as well as the commitment on the glass. And like as a playmaker, like I know you kind of mentioned it, like the concerns with it. I think he does a pretty solid job of like keeping the turnovers down, especially considering his usage. But a lot of his playmaking is like predetermined, and a lot of like when he deals with different schematics defensively, I think that's like what you mentioned. Like he tends to struggle. He's got to get to the point where he's a little bit more unpredictable offensively because they know what's coming. It's one dribble and on a post touch, I'm gonna take 2 steps and try to raise up over you. But also he's got to be more willing off the ball to either just get more catch and shoot reps, or especially coming off screen, just be a lot more willing to take those threes. Like he's just got to add another layer to his offensive skill set, which obviously he already has layers upon layers. But like adding another part that can keep the defense on their heels, but ultimately maybe someday make him just borderline unguardable. Like, and he's pretty close to that already at the college level. We just need to see another step get taken. And I don't know why he feels like the most obvious Kings pick ever. I don't know why. I keep seeing that all over my timeline.
He's go to the Kings and he's just going to leave at some point because that's what the Kings do.
Exactly.
Let's trade Keon Ellis and Dennis Schroeder because they're totally not good.
Totally.
Oh man. But yeah, for this next one, I was gonna say because you have Cam at year one, I was gonna say how about I'll kind of go over the DP stuff. I'll like mention Cam a little bit, but if you want to go over a bit more with Cam,
Yeah.
I'll mention really quickly Cam. I have no contention at all with him being number one. I'm gonna be 100% honest with you. It is simply that I'm just higher on what I think DP is gonna be in the league, right? But with Cameron Boozer, I mentioned this before, right? I saw him play in person when I went to Hoop Exchange down in Orlando. And I was like, oh, this guy's not that good. I'm not that impressed with him. Like, I saw Cooper Flag there play too, and I'm like, oh my God, he's so good, blah, 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 right? And, like, I was talking to you before I really got into this type of stuff, but I was like, bro, I don't think Cam Booster's going to translate to even college, bro, much less the league. I am an idiot, right? Now on him, it's just, I saw it on Twitter, somebody posted, they're like, God, create the perfect power forward, and it's just the shot of Cam Boozer I mean, he is just so versatile. I think the biggest outstanding thing with him is the fact that his top eight play types, right? 80th
Yeah.
percentile or above in all of them. I don't know if you have the numbers, but if you need me to, I can list them
I
off with some of the other stuff. It is so
yeah.
dumb with him, so versatile, does everything well. Just he is the most obvious, like 15 career, multi-time All-Star, All NBA. Like I'm going to be good, if not great, no matter what type of player, right?
Yeah.
Um, but with DP, the thing is with DP, I simply just I was gonna like kind of go all in and be like, oh my god, he's Kobe or whatever. But I think the more apt archetype is like supercharged Ray Allen, like Ray Allen on roids. Um, but with him, I simply just believe that what he is as a player is essentially the perfect guard for this era and the most valuable thing you can have as a scorer in this era, right? And I'm gonna make the comparison to SGA later on and kind of what he does. Um, so, firstly, I do want to say the biggest issue with him, and I'm so serious. I don't think there's any other flaws with him offensively or really even defensively. Um, just general as a player, besides his playmaking, right? Like the playmaking has just not been good. He has an 11% assist percentage. He's averaging only 2.1 assists per 40, which is just stupid. He has a 33% usage rating. You should be generating more, right? Um, the only reason I'm not as worried about that is because there are flashes and signs of him being able to do that. And back in high school, he was a genuinely elite, like maybe not elite, but he was a great playmaker, right? Like he could make these reads and do the things that you wanted to see out of a primary lead guard, right? Um, and so I like genuinely to me that is the only flaw I really find within the entirety of his game. The other only other thing really is the injury concern, and it's just not been that big of an issue to me, right? Like the things he is dealing with are I'm gonna bring up your favorite player ever, right? But it reminds me of Paulo and where they were talking about with him and his like sweating and blah blah blah. Obviously, screw Paulo, he's so buns, but like he still was able to become a decent player in the league. Um, and I just don't think unless it's like something super detrimental, I don't see it being an issue. People talking about his mental and stuff like that. Like I just think it's so blown out of proportion, and he makes the effort to play games. Like he genuinely does. Like I remember the like exposed thing on Twitter or whatever, where he's like saying, "Oh, screw it, then I'm just not gonna play or whatever." Right? Like
Yeah.
people seem to just trying to go against that when he's like he's in the practice trying to play, and they're telling him if you're injured, don't play. Right? Like it's not like he's not there all the time. It's just been too much, right? But with DP, I'm just gonna kind of go over the numbers first, and then use those numbers to kind of go over more, why I feel the way I do about him, right? So per 40, 28 points per 40. He's normally averaging at the time when I did the data for this. He was only averaging 19 and 27 minutes of game time, right? And he's only taking 20 attempts per game, right? He's shooting 47% from the field, 40% from three. Has a 61% true shooting, and he's still getting to the line. Funny number, 6.7 free throw attempts per 40, right? And he's 80% at the line. Um,
Yeah.
and the other big thing with him is that he is only averaging 2.2 turnovers per 40. He is the master at like especially in college basketball at simply protecting the basketball as a primary on-ball creator, right? Like and I'll start kind of with the shade comparison here. That is the most valuable thing you can do as a primary initiator is not turn the ball over and give up possessions. And he simply just does not do that. I think the handle and feel he has as a player is just simply ridiculous, right? I brought up the usage earlier, 33%. He has the ball. And when he does have the ball, he is simply not turning it over and is able to generate elite offense as a self-creator, right? We talk about that with SGA and why it's so efficient and like valuable because the floor as a creator, if you are able to do such, is so ridiculously high, right? I think that's kind of where the Kobe comp comes in. I don't think it's that, but just how ridiculous it is to have that ability, right, as a self-creator, right? AJ kind of has that similar ability, but I just don't think it's at the same level as DP, right? And the defense, it's still there. 1.6 steals per 40, 2.3 stocks. He has the motor. He's shown the effort, right? Again, going back to the Kansas BYU game, he is choosing to like get in lanes, pick up guys, he wants the AJ matchup, right? Like he has that on that end. He's shown it in a good amount of games where he is like, I'm gonna get into lanes, I'm gonna pick up a guy, I'm gonna make a play, right? He's just simply giving me more on that end than like a guy like AJ. I'm definitely not gonna argue with like a guy like Cam. Cam has been, I think, actually severely underrated on that end from a lot of people. Um, but just in general, looking at his numbers against top 50 quality teams, his three ball only drops off by 2%. His true shooting drops off by only 4%, right? So he's still been solid, even in like the kind of low amount that we've got of him in those, limited minutes. He's still been really good. I think about the game today against Arizona, right? As I'm watching him play, he is just simply so much more efficient than everybody else around. Like he does not look like he belongs on the floor with these guys, right? Um, I did get a little bit mad at him when I was mad that he was like playing a little bit more off the ball, wasn't as like demanding the ball as like the game was starting to get out of hand, right? When it's go time, obviously for DP, right? But as soon as he gets the ball, I believe he it was either drives left or right, but he gets to the right elbow, step back money, right? Like just immediately, like I think it was two, three, maybe even four possessions where he just doesn't touch the ball, and just immediately comes off and just gets right to it, right? And it's just it's so ridiculous what he can do as an on-ball creator, right? And then just some of the other efficiency numbers. He's 61% at the rim on 14% of them being assisted, 49% on twos, 21% of them being assisted. His three ball has been a lot more assisted at 80%. And he's taking 10 threes per 40. That is stupid. His basically he is almost at a 50% three-point rate. That is utterly absurd. So he is just taking a stupid amount of them. So I'm not as worried about the amount of them being assisted because of the fact of how good of a shooter he is and the type of shots he's taking from these assisted shots, right? Where we talk about this is probably my favorite part where I get to talk about him is that your guy this year, Con Knipple, he has a better shooting profile than Con this year, and Con is the best shooting rookie we have ever seen. It is ridiculous what DP is doing, right? He is right. Just the baseline numbers: 1.23 points per possession on jump shots, and his 66.7% of his possessions have been jump shots. It's stupid, right? And one of the issues with him is the drive rate, only 20% on the drive rate. And I think part of that simply is just, the hammy, him being injured and stuff like that. And he's still efficient when he gets there, right? Like we talk about it. He's not stupid explosive and stuff like that, but he can blow by a guy and go punch on them. If he wants to, he can still create down there and be efficient. I just wish he did it more, right? Gets like, even with that 20% drive rate, he's still getting to the line almost 7 times per 40. So this is what I'm talking about with him. The next step in his evolution will be driving more and getting to the line more because it's just going to make him even more ridiculous of a scorer than he is already, right? And then some of the other stuff, right? 1.6 points per possession on spot ups. That is a 100 percentile. 1.42 points per possession on catch and shoots. 97th percentile. 1.9 points per possession on handoffs. 88th percentile. He is an elite, if not all-time great already, as an off-ball scorer. It is ridiculous, right? And just in general, his ability to blend that with the on-ball creation is so stupidly absurd and so valuable. He is going to basically come into the league and be like a perfect scorer. Like he's going to have to obviously develop and get better and stuff like that, but he is going to be the perfect guard scorer. I quickly I just want to look at his size, but just the fact of what he is as, a guard, looking at the measurables, he's 6'6", 205 pounds as a shooting guard. He is the Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan type frame of a guard, right? And the shot die is everywhere. I've seen him in the post-ups, in the back downs, in the turnaround fadeaways. I've seen him work in the intermediate range, in the pull-ups, in the floaters and stuff like that. I've seen him get to the rim, punch it at a guy, have a finesse finish. I'm seeing him come off of a handoff, get to a 1-2 pull, if not an immediate catch and shoot 3. I've seen him be an elite transition player. I've seen him be an elite transition shooter. I've seen him do basically everything as a scorer, and then still be elite on the other end, right? So the concerns as a playmaker are very real. They are extremely real, and I'm a bit worried about that. But I do think he can get back to the point that he's at, right? But he is essentially so good as a jump shooter and a scorer in general, right? And this is where I will finish off the kind of SGA comparison. The reason SGA is so good as a player now is because he has the ability to just generate elite offense from, just these short jumpers, long mid-range jumpers and stuff like that, right? It it simply just allows your offense to be at a floor that is so ridiculous high because nobody is going to try and take away those jump shots from you, and it is so incredibly difficult to take them away from you, right? And then on top of that, he is so elite of a three-point shooter that is just essentially, what do we do with this guy, right? Do we really now want to just say we just want to send him to the rim all the time, right? He's taking 70% of his shots almost are jump shots. Like, are we now going to say, yes, we're just going to let you now get to the rim because you're so good of a scorer as a just jump shooter, right? It is simply unreal. And I take all this into account and I think about the fact that he is still not even 100%. He's probably at 70, 80% of what he could have been this year. He doesn't play as much as he could this year either. It is just so ridiculous of what he can be, right? And this is where we talk about the floor as a player, right? What I'm really valuing when he comes into the league. He is going to come into the league and he's going to be great from day one. He is going to come in and be an elite scorer from it. Like we talk about guys as a rookie being able to score 20 a game. I would be disappointed unless there's like some injury woes or something like that if he does not average 20 a game as a scorer efficiently as a rookie, right? Like I genuinely think that's what he's supposed to be and come in as, and he should only get better, as that. And I think that's just kind of where I stand with DP is that he's still not at his best, and I'm still seeing some of the most ridiculous stuff I've seen from anybody as a scorer while still being elite on the other end and having the motor, right? And that's all it comes back to is that when he gets into the league, he is going to have the essentially the most valuable trait of that any player can have, which is the ability to score the ball efficiently and it's going to be able to raise the floor of a team, and he can and obviously part of that being the three ball, which I mentioned at the beginning, is the most like one of the two most valuable things besides like rim protection, right? That's just kind of where I stand on him with him. But again, with Cam, I 100% understand anybody going with Cam. I just think the floor with Darian again, Darian Peterson, with Darian Peterson is just so high, and the peak of what he can be is like legitimately just one of the greatest scorers and floor raisers this game has ever seen. But yeah, I'll let you go ahead and get into the stuff with Cam.
Yeah, just to kind of touch on Darren for just a little bit, because obviously, I mean, dude, he was my one for a while, and I do think like the assist to turnover stuff like that can be concerning, but I also think like if he's just a pure two guard, like who cares? Ultimately, obviously, you want to see some improvement there, and like if he's going to be engineering like a top tier offense, like you got to see. I think a lot of like the drive rate stuff could be. I think he definitely could fill out his frame a little bit more, but also like we really have no idea like how much the hamstring is affecting him, and kind of like I'm sure there's a mental block with it as well.
Yeah.
And that's it happens, like that's gonna happen. But
What we talked about
if,
before is like if this guy is just, Ray Allen but better, that's your floor. That's absurd. Like,
yeah,
so that's just kind of how it is with him. But yeah,
yeah, Ray Allen with stocks, like and it potentially he ends up if he hits his high, like we're looking at a pretty that's like generational. So, but obviously, I mean, Boozer's been my one for I want to say probably 2 months now. That sounds about right. But a lot of like the reasoning behind it, and I think a lot of it may just be me being frustrated with like the Twitter, not like all the Twitter scouts, but like the Instagram scouts saying like, "Oh, this guy's ceiling's low." Like, dude, he's having arguably a better season than Flag, and he was younger than him. Oh, no, he wasn't younger than Flag, but he's younger than Peterson and Devonsa. And you guys are saying like, oh no, yeah, his ceiling's lower just because he's what less athletic and less aesthetically pleasing, just because he's a bruiser. Like, bro, if efficient offense is efficient offense, no matter how you get it. And I do have the photo. I know you mentioned the play types. Like, I mean, it's pretty ridiculous. Like he's 80th percentile in post up possessions, 85th in transition, 95th in spot up, 92nd as a cut man, pick and roll man, or as the roll man, he's 90th percentile, putbacks 84th, and then what's even crazier is as a ball handler, he's 90th percentile. As a roll man, he's 90th, and as a handler, he's 90th. Like that's special at 6'9", 250. Like, and then isolation 93rd. So, I mean, that kind of tells you like the versatility in terms of obviously the play type and like just he can score from just about everywhere. And I think he even showed I don't know the numbers on it with like EYBL and all that because I don't know how to find that and I'm too lazy to find it. But regardless, like I think he's got a little bit more intermediate juice than we're not seeing than compared to like what we are seeing.
Straight to that point,
And
some of the things that just popping out to me on my notes is he is 38% on twos, right? And obviously not a great number since it's not above 40, but it's been low volume, 31 attempts, but 0% of them have been assisted, right? Like he's still generating those shots and kind of hitting them at a decent clip, while just basically pure self creation, right? So
yeah, yeah. So I like, and I don't think it'll be similar. I mentioned it the other day. Like Knipple, his off the dribble stuff like was not good at Duke. Like it was low volume and low conversion. But EYBL, he was like I want to say low 40s, maybe like 43% conversion rate on him. So, and I'm not shocked that he's doing it in the NBA now. Like I think in terms of like the talk surrounding each of those guys, it's very similar. Just because they're not athletic, they play off 2 feet and just super fundamental and just it's not like their game's not flashy, but production is if the production's there, especially at such a young age, especially historically as well. Like I don't know the exact like statistical like profile and query where it was like comparing a bunch of guys, but like historically, freshmen with like a really high BPM, box plus minus, of course, like the one that takes into account like everything, like with a high box plus minus, like they end up being all stars, like, and the hit rate with that has been really good. So that's kind of like in terms of like what he like a quick rundown, like he's the versatility, like he's basically just Thanos on offense, dude. Like that's like that's essentially what he does. He's a bruiser with like a really sweet footwork and on the interior. He's a really good passer. His processing and passing out of like double teams is probably the best that I've seen for a player this age, and it's pretty special what he's able to do with the ball in his hands, but also as like just as a processor and his IQ. And I think a lot of that probably comes from his dad being Carlos Boozer, but like nonetheless, like he's just ridiculous. It's gotten to the point where he's so good that people just tend to forget. Like he's been the most consistent guy the whole entire college season. So obviously we'll see what happens, but he's special.
No, I think you kind of just hit on the nail there. The biggest-
I may have just lost Elijah. Not entirely sure what happened there, but I'm gonna try to get him back. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Obviously, getting close to 2 hours, but God bless, of course. We will be looking to talk about the draft a lot more. I'll see you guys in the next video. Appreciate you guys watching.